So now for a moment, let's just think about how we can use the technology of blockchain. What areas would it actually touch? So Bitcoin is a one-trick pony, right? It allows you to transfer Bitcoins, and that essentially is it. But if you take a step back and think about what could possibly a blockchain do, right? A blockchain being a decentralized system and a decentralized platform where, it's decentralized, but or distributed is the better word. But at the same time, it means that the information is consistently kept all over the place. So in some sense, it doesn't matter where physically a server is located and so on and so forth. So what does that mean, what we could do? Well, for instance, moving value across borders in remittances, for instance, would be much easier. Assets can be tokenized easily, right? So essentially you take an existing asset, you find a way how to store it and have somebody hold custody over an asset and issue a new token, so that there's a trust relationship. Then you can essentially tokenize anything, any existing asset. You can tokenize durable goods, something that you've just produced, gold, silver, steel, anything really. And so that means that there's the set of items that you can trade and that you can exchange claims to is dramatically increasing. Securitization is then also possible. Once you have a lot of assets, you can create new financial contracts based on these assets. Of course, you can have digital money, you can have real-time settlement, you can reduce the reserves that banks have to hold, so which frees up capital. You can change the systems and infrastructure of an organization very dramatically. So in case you know, most firms in some form or another use SAP or Oracle, at least the bigger firms. And what historically actually happened at the time when SAP came out was that as people what SAP, sorry, let me just explain. SAP is essentially an accounting software which is highly integrated from within a firm, but also to suppliers and so on and so forth. So the idea being, you sell a good, you're a particular producer, you sell a good. What that does, it sets in motion a stream of events, right? So when you sell a good, you need to have a work order, which means you may need to buy supplies. Some may come in a fixed form, some mean that you need to have supplies from a vendor for you, and so on and so forth. And so what the software would do is basically would automate this entire process, so that in your factory where you produce things, the items that you needed to purchase in order to produce the good that you have sold would automatically appear one day, right? So that's the idea. Now, one thing that SAP cannot do is to move the money around, because the money is in your firm, right? It's in your bank. But with a blockchain and with direct value transfers, you can add to that the real transfers of money. Now, why is that important? Well, it is important in the following sense: is when SAP was first conceived, the implementation was an entire industry all by itself, right? So if you think of Accenture, for instance, Accenture is used to be Andersen Consulting, which was the consulting brand of Arthur Andersen, the accounting firm. And at some point, Andersen Consulting became significantly larger than Arthur Andersen ever has been. And then, of course, Arthur Andersen also essentially died with the Enron scandal in the late 1990s. If you have not heard about this, read up on it. It's actually, it's a whole interesting story all by itself. But the important part is that what Andersen Consulting was doing is they would not just go into a firm and just have a system, put in a system on top of what already existed. No, they actually reorganized firms. This is why it was done by a consulting firm. And so now you can imagine that once you add also the value transfers in a direct way, this again could lead to an entire reorganization of an industry. So what you would do is you would digitize huge amounts of activities that beforehand had to actually be done manually, the billing and so on and so forth. So this is a major thing, and it's a major opportunity also. It also gives firms the opportunity to rethink their processes and their systems as a whole. Now, since I'm talking about all the possibilities, there's also the automation of contract payments. There are digital identities. You can use blockchain for digital identity. There is a Canadian firm that does precisely that. a secure key, it's called. And so if you, for instance, pay your taxes, I'm sure you're not there yet, but when you pay your taxes, you can log into your tax account using your bank's login, and this whole system is enabled by Secure Key. And Secure Key is also developing a digital identity which uses some form of blockchain technology. And then finally, you can imagine that there will be new forms of financial contracts, assets, and form of financing, and we'll talk about the details of that. So in other words, the potential for blockchain technology and the application areas, just in terms of finance and loosely also accounting, is enormous.